I'm sorry, but it wasn't me.
Why am I still taking green pills then?
I don't know. I thought you'd stop.
Why am I asking you anything? Well, to keep us on a leash, right? Is that it? To keep a hold on us? To keep us dependent? Who tells you that this is okay?
No, I do.
Who says it's okay?
I do research. I design, I survey. I don't administer meds. I don't make policy.
Now you just load the gun.
God. Look, I was there for the science. We were all there for science. We were all there for science.
Do you have a feeling that there is sometimes an all-out war against science?
Oh, yeah. I mean, particularly over the last few years, there's an anti-authority feeling in the world. And science has an air of authority to it. So people who want to push back on authority tend to, as a sidebar, push back on science.
There has been a battle going on that has been waged against humanity for thousands of years. It's a spiritual battle that has been going on that most people today don't even recognize. This is a battle of who we follow and who do we trust. What God do we serve? There has been many ways that this battle has been fought against us, bringing more and more people into trusting the God of this world, Satan, our true adversary, more than trusting our true creator, Yahuwah, our Father in heaven. Knowledge and false light is something that is an extreme weapon used by our enemy. Knowledge is something that Lucifer uses to entice many to follow him. Now, when I'm saying knowledge, I'm not speaking about all knowledge, but the false knowledge that shows the world how to live without our Father in heaven. Lucifer is a promoter of this knowledge, and he tells those who follow him that he is trying to free humanity, while our creator Yahuwah is trying to keep us in bondage, as a slave to him. That's what he sells. In summary, through giving out his knowledge, he shows people that they do not have to depend on our creator, but on their own selves. He promotes that salvation is not found through Yeshua, but through man. That we are the masters of our fate and captains of our soul. There are many ways that he promotes this, but this subject we are going to discuss today is probably one of the biggest promotions of this idea. Science has been promoted to us as a way of curing the world from its ailments and making the world a better place because of our increasing knowledge. But in reality, when we see this increasing knowledge, it is in fact the increasing of the light of Lucifer spreading throughout the world. And as we begin to trust in all the advancements that has been made and promoted, we have begun to trust more in science than we do in our Creator. There is now a blurring of the line that people feel this knowledge comes from God, and in one deceiving way it does. It's just a different lesser God that most people are not aware of. The truth is that science has been used as a weapon or tool against the creator of this world to show that we do not need him. This world is trying to prove that he is less powerful than we believe, and it creates a false religion that places the God of this world as the God that deserves the credit and worship for saving humanity. Most people don't recognize the truth about science versus God, or the religion of science, and it's something that needs to be spoken of. It is a part of the lies that keep us stuck in the matrix. We need to break free, so we are going to dig right into it right now. Let's begin. So, as we begin, let's make sure we are all on the same page. What is science? If we go to the Science Council on sciencecouncil.org, they define science as science is the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. You see, it's about proving things they can see through using knowledge and the studying of evidence. Science can be seen as the opposite of faith. Now, before you jump at me, let me explain. What is faith? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith is the evidence of things not seen. And science is the evidence of things seen. Scientists won't quantify or study things they cannot see or prove. This is why a high percentage of scientists identify as atheists or agnostics rather than believing in God. Now, this is not my own opinion, but this is based on a study done just over 20 years ago in 1998 by the National Academy of Science. A survey published in the leading science journal of that time, Nature, conclusively displayed this. A 1998 survey based on a self-selected sample of biological and physical scientists of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States found that 7% believed in the existence of God. 7%. 72.2% did not. And 20.8% were agnostic or had doubts. And that was in 1998. Most leading scientists are atheists that don't believe in our Creator. By that point alone, it should raise alarm bells for everyone that holds science on this great pedestal. An interesting fact to know is before the 17th century, science was known as natural philosophy. Science is a more modern term. So now when you know this, it's easy to see how Scripture immediately taught us to beware of it. Colossians chapter 2 verse 8 says, "Beware lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to Messiah." We were warned. People make claims that because God created everything, He created science too. And so this is why we should embrace it. Yes, God did create everything. He made everything perfectly and wonderfully. He made the water. He made our plants and animals. In His word, He never taught us how to use these things or how He even made them and why. He told us that He made these things for us and we should use them. But science goes deeper than what God has said and has decided to show us the way of doing things ourselves without God. And if we do not like God's way, we have found our own way to bypass Him. This idea has been subtly promoted to us over time. Think of all these end-time movies about coming destruction. Whether it was a meteor coming to wipe everyone out, or a climate change event, or aliens coming down. Whatever the event, the movie showed humanity with the tools to finally prevent God's wrath. What we do not recognize is that this is Satan's way of promoting his thousands-year-old scheme that he gave the first one-world government in Samaria under Nimrod. The Tower of Babel was created so that man could save themselves and protect themselves from God's wrath if He ever decided to flood the earth again. Many people have heard of the Tower of Babel, but they don't realize that they built the tower to challenge our Creator. And science has been developing and growing over these thousands of years to create many different examples of the Tower of Babel, showing that we can do things to protect ourselves from God's wrath, making bunkers, fake spaceships, etc. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's important. The truth is, the only way of removing us from God's wrath is by submitting to Him and abiding in Him, by following Him. He has sent many plagues and judgments on this earth to deal with the disobedience of His creation. We are at a time where instead of recognizing that He is working and doing things to get our attention, we have fooled ourselves by creating ways to get around His judgments. We are making ourselves our own gods unknowingly. It's very deep, and perhaps this thought has gone over many people's heads, so I'm going to slow down and just go back. Science was always against our Creator. If we go back to the time of the ancient Greeks, the Israelites said that God created the earth and everything in it. But Aristotle, one of the most important natural philosophers during that time, said that the world must have existed from eternity, challenging the belief that God created the heavens and the earth. This is a huge example in the beginning of science countering the word of Elohim. When Messiah walked this earth, His ministry was one of healing and miracles. He literally brought sight to the blind, cleansed men from disease. Women were healed just by touching Him. People brought their sick to Him just so He could heal them. He even raised Lazarus from the dead. His ministry was one of power that gained massive attention and one that built faith in him as being divine. When he performed these miracles, faith in him grew. No one was looking for the scientific reasons. People saw with their own eyes and instantly began to believe. The more and more evidence he provided, the more faith people had in him. Even when the church began, faith in him continued to grow because of the accounts that were given of him, that is known as the Bible. During the times of the Bible, it was not about science, but about the power of God. Now, if we just speed up through time, 1,500 years later, we see the beginnings of the confusion that brought us to where we are today. In the 17th century, a new movement began that challenged the view that those who held faith in Messiah had. This was the scientific revolution.
What we now call science emerged about 400 years ago through the work of a group of European thinkers who discovered new ways of interpreting the world. They no longer relied on the delivered word of God. The scientific revolution put individual curiosity, inquiry, reason, and experiment above religious dogma. To my mind, science is quite simply the biggest challenge that Christianity will ever have to face.
During the period of the Renaissance, the rising power of science was growing, and the Catholic Church, who were another group desperate to hold on to control, they led a silencing campaign of these scientists and movement. This created a controlled war of ideals, where both sides were actually working for the same God, but just wanted belief in him to come in a different way. It was their white magic versus black magic. Scientists were destroyed for questioning the authority of the Catholic Church. Now, if we go back and look how science took hold in our history, it was always done as a challenge of our God. Nicholas Copernicus argued that the Earth was a planet orbiting the sun. Christians during this time rightfully believed that the Earth was stationary and the sun and moon revolved around it. Copernicus planted a seed of doubt against the church, who claimed to be the ultimate authority, not able to be questioned. Copernicus started the real doubt, and other natural philosophers, scientists, took his theory further. Like Giordano Bruno, who believed that not only was there other planets, but there were living things on these planets. Because of the Inquisition and the church declaring that anyone that held another view besides what they taught were heretics worthy of death, Bruno was sentenced to death and burned. And this was a major spark in the battle between what they declare as faith versus reason. Galileo Galilei introduced the telescope building on Copernicus's theory. They claim him as the first astronomer to base his theory on evidence. Then, in the 18th century, we had people like the Grand Master of the Priory of Sion, Isaac Newton, who introduced his enlightenment and his law of physics. This was all esoteric knowledge that was being brought into the light, which is why it was the period of enlightenment. When Benjamin Franklin invented the lightning rod, it was looked at as a way of stopping God's wrath. Before his time, churches would get burned and struck down by lightning. When this happened, it would devastate communities because they felt somebody must have done something wrong and provoked God's wrath. When Benjamin Franklin put up the lightning rod, it was perceived as a way of stopping God's wrath. It was a real mixing of science and religion. Science was used to prevent God's wrath. Today, many will look at that view of stopping God's wrath as silly because they just see lightning. But ask yourself, is it that you have that view because you have been conditioned in this way? And moving on, when we get to Charles Darwin, everything really changed. He created his theory of evolution and challenged the whole existence of God himself. In 1859, Darwin published On the Origin of Species, which suggested that life on Earth was not designed by God, but had evolved through a process called natural selection. His theory canceled out the theory that we were made in God's image and supported that we were at one time apes. He also came with the theory of the survival of the fittest, in which this scientific theory became the basis point of the elite class of families that thought their wealth and power gave them a right to rule. The Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Morgans alike held on to this Darwinian view, and that's important to understand if you're going to understand modern science and medicine of today. The point you must get before we move on is that science was always used as a way of challenging God and his existence. And if you don't understand that, it will block you from understanding how we got to this point in history we are in now. Let me also make it clear that I am not a hater of all science. I am not saying that all science is wicked and evil. What I'm speaking directly to is the mindset that surrounds science, which has severely reduced faith in our Father in heaven. There has been many things done over time that science has assisted and helped. But along with that, there has been a subtle overriding view that has taken away our need of God, our dependence on him, and our dependence on scientists. Just look at where we are today. In the beginning of this pandemic, people, including the church, were not depending on God for deliverance and his covering. They were not waiting on him. They were waiting on science. And when science said that they had the answer, this is when they listened. The leader that many people voted in did not say, trust God. He said,
Listen to the scientists.
Listen to the scientists.
Trust the scientists. In fact, videos on YouTube will be taken down and given strikes if you even told people to just trust God while speaking against their solution. You had to be very careful. This is a mindset that has come from the promotion of science over our faith. And this is what I'm tackling, not a hatred of all science. If you choose to misunderstand that, then that's really on you. Now let's keep going. Now, as we jump into today, people again like to claim that because God created everything, that means he created science and gave us this knowledge to do the things that we have done. The view is that science is basically God's way of helping society grow. But this really is not the case. This view needs a readjustment. Instead of placing God there, we should change it with Satan and then expand on it. Science is Satan's way of helping society grow away from God. People have given away all their trust to science and medicine today. Basically, our lives are run by scientists and what they feel about things. People defend science, but they do not really understand how these developments have happened. Let's right now cover the view that we should trust science because it comes from God. This is something that I'm going to debunk using one major example. We are going to talk about the father of modern medicine. Now, this industry is very deep, but if you can just understand this influence, everything else should make sense. When speaking of science coming from God, what people do not think about is the money that is behind the research. People just don't come out of nowhere with a big development that the world accepts and implements. The truth is that science would not be possible without the backing of major donors and grants. You have many theories, projects, and experiments that fail, that you never heard of. Not everything works. There is a lot of money that goes into research. Our science has not been primarily funded by the government, but by private donors and corporations. Every major breakthrough has happened because there was major money behind it, backing it. So when we say God is responsible for the breakthroughs, which God are we talking about? Because there is a very specific God on the back of our dollar bills. Anyways, the same families that I have shown in this Breaking Out of the Matrix series, the first part, about following the money. Those same families are the same ones that are the main creators of our science and medical industry. In most of these Breaking Out the Matrix series, you're going to see their influence because they are the ones that have created this matrix. Let's jump and go directly to Rockefeller University. On their site, they plainly say as their motto, science for the benefit of humanity. The Rockefeller family have been major influencers of the scientific and medical community. John D. Rockefeller is known as the father of modern medicine, for those who look deeper than what they are mind-controlled to know. With his deep pockets, he exerted his control. So before we talk about the present and what they currently show on this website, Let's go a century back. Let's talk about modern Western medicine. What medicine is like today is not what it was like centuries ago. Doctors used to practice healing through the natural. Our Father created a world that has the natural resources that were able to give us what our bodies needed to heal. Natural and herbal medicines were very popular in America during the early 1900s. Almost one half the medical colleges and doctors in America were practicing holistic medicine, using extensive knowledge from Europe and Native American traditions. But in the 20th century, all that changed. John D. Rockefeller, the wealthiest man in the history of America, was a huge proponent of this change, and most people don't even know of his influence. Most people don't even know of him. By the turn of the 20th century, Rockefeller controlled 90% of all petroleum refineries in America through ownership of his company, Standard Oil Corporation. His company, Standard Oil, was later split into smaller companies, Mobil, Chevron, Exxon, etc., making the family even wealthier. In the beginning of the 20th century, the 1900s, the science world was getting excited about new petrochemicals and the ability to create a variety of new compounds from oil. Some of the first products derived from petrochemicals were plastics, but organic chemists knew that oil had the potential to create far more than plastic bags. With all the research done, it was found that drugs could be produced from petroleum. So the world's top oil man, who controlled the petroleum market, decided to use his influence to change the medical industry. In the early 1900s, there were a variety of doctors and healing methods in America. Some of the medical specialties included chiropractic, naturopathy, homeopathy, holistic medicine, and herbal medicine. To eliminate the competition, Rockefeller used his massive wealth and influence and changed the game. Rockefeller purchased part of the German pharmaceutical company IG Farben. You can look up this company's involvement in World War II. There's a lot to say about them. They're now known as Bayer. He hired a contractor named Abraham Flexner, and Flexner submitted a report to Congress in 1910. This is known as the Flexner Report. This report concluded that there were too many doctors and medical schools in America, and that all the natural healing methods which had existed for hundreds of years were now unscientific quackery. Medicines used for thousands of years were now classified as alternative, and the new petroleum-based patentable drugs were declared the gold standard. And then, gaining more control, Rockefeller then took control of the American Medical Association. And through that report that Abraham Flexner submitted to Congress, he called for a standardization of medical information. Based on the report, Congress acted upon Flexner's recommendations and changed laws related to medical practice. With these legal changes in place, Rockefeller teamed up with Andrew Carnegie and started funding medical schools all over America on the strict condition that they only taught their curriculum. The medicine that he was in control of was now the standard of medicine. Through the power of their huge grants, this powerful team systematically dismantled the previous curriculum of these medical schools, removing any mention of the healing power of herbs or natural treatments. Teachings on diet and other natural, non-drug treatments were also completely removed from medical programs. Any mention of their healing power was erased from the medical textbooks. Medicine was changed from wellness and prevention to simply treatment. You're ill? Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. We were moved from using the solutions Father gave us to heal us and moved to the solution that science provided us. Those that were against this change were silenced, and as time went by, people just did as they were taught. After removing traditional medicine from schools, Rockefeller made sure to secure his monopoly by launching a targeted smear campaign against his competitors. Homeopathy and natural medicines were discredited and demonized through the newspapers and other media of the time. Some doctors were even jailed for using natural medicine treatments. including treatments that had been used safely and effectively for decades before. In a very short time, medical colleges were all made uniform. All the students were taught the same allopathic system. Allopathic means science-based. Medicine was now defined as a process of prescribing patented drugs. A pill for an ill became the mindset of American medicine. And maybe you want to think that this was all done by Rockefeller because of money, but it was not that. His family was tasked with helping promote and create this new world order that we're headed to. And he used his influence to create a world that depended more on the God of this world than the God of the Bible. It was not about money. He had all the money he could ever have. The work of Rockefeller and Carnegie was a success. They crushed the underfunded grassroots competition and created our current medical system. A system of science-based medicine that we are never able to challenge and we must accept blindly. This system continues today, wherein Big Pharma makes large donations to medical schools in exchange for teaching the medical students to use their patented drugs. As part of this system, many alternative treatments are criminalized. When evidence came out that petroleum-based medicines might have been causing cancer, Rockefeller then founded the American Cancer Society in 1913 and then suppressed that information. So now, even to this day, people get cancer and no one can explain to you why all of a sudden these cancers have appeared. There's no prevention, just treatment. Rockefeller is literally the father of modern medicine, and most people, including doctors, don't have a clue. When I've talked to doctors and even surgeons, most don't even know of Rockefeller and his oil empire, so they definitely don't understand this history. It's the Matrix. Like these elite families did with all the other industries, they hid themselves under the guise and control of major corporations and exerted their power and control through them. So now we don't talk about them, we just call it Big Pharma. The Rockefeller Empire, along with Chase Manhattan Bank, known as now JP Morgan Chase, owns over half of the pharmaceutical interests in the United States. So now, if we go back to Rockefeller University, look at what they have to say. Bioscience is what we do. Our singular focus is on powering the breakthroughs that will transform medicine. You see, they are transforming medicine. Who we are. The world's leading biomedical research university. Rockefeller draws top scientists and graduate students from around the world in pursuit of one mission: to conduct science for the benefit of humanity. Our history. At the time of the Institute's founding, infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, diphtheria, and typhoid fever were considered the greatest known threats to human health. New research centers in Europe, including the Koch and Pasteur Institutes, were successfully applying laboratory science to increase our understanding of those and other diseases. Following their lead, the Rockefeller Institute became the first biomedical research center in the United States. A new kind of hospital. The Rockefeller Institute Hospital, crucial to the Institute's mission, opened in 1910, the first center for clinical research in the United States. It remains a place where researchers can link laboratory investigations with bedside observations to provide a scientific basis for disease detection, prevention, and treatment. Early on, researchers at the hospital studied polio, heart disease, and diabetes, among other diseases. This special hospital environment served as the model for dozens of other clinical research centers established over the next decades. They clearly controlled and steered our modern medicine. I went over this for you so you can see how intertwined the Rockefeller family is with our science and medicine. They are the pioneers and founders of modern science and medicine, and most people don't even know of their influence. Ask your doctors if they know this history. You will find that your trusted professionals are sheep just like the rest, but just because they went to school longer, they want you to look at them as the genius, and they are smarter than you. But there is no independent thought today. It's all sheep being led by wolves. So understand, all this modern science and research are not gifts from the God of the Bible. Modern medicine was made to push us away from dependency on the God of the Bible, our Father in heaven, and what he has given us to sustain ourselves. And now we are held to science. They do let us practice holistic medicines and talk about natural healings as long as it is accompanied with witchcraft. Alchemy and witches are able to practice this type of medicine freely. Medicine today is all about follow the leader. The doctors and nurses are not pioneers. They go to school to learn the education that the Rockefellers established. They treat what they are told, how they are told. And if you are one that wants to venture out and treat away from their ways of modern medicine with holistic medicines, this will not go well for you. The science and medical industry, like all other industries in this world, is controlled. And I just gave a small, brief breakdown of it so that you can understand how deep this all is. Satan is involved completely in our scientific and medical breakthroughs. But because people believe that God is involved, they believe it's all God helping humanity. It's Satan helping humanity to be rid of the influence and need for God. These scientists continually push the envelope to make the case that we do not need the God of the Bible. All we hear today is,
Listen to the scientists.
Listen to the scientists.
it's such a blanket phrase that people have adopted because they have grown up with an unquestioned trust of society. From our schools to our doctors, we trust our professionals pretty much, no questions asked. But what we do not do is question who is funding this science and what are their goals. I don't think we're even allowed to doubt scientists at this time. So this video may not be on this platform for long. The goal is simple, and most people in this world have fell for it. Trust science because it comes from God. But the catch that people don't recognize is that the God they are talking about is Satan. Those that have been given massive power and wealth in this world were tasked with creating a world that will be ready to accept Satan as our God. It's not about money, but living in their purpose. The more we trust science, the more we are challenging our Creator unknowingly. Science seeks to tackle and challenge everything that our Creator puts in its way. As believers, we must understand that this world is run by Satan. In order for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled, agents of Satan have been given enormous amounts of power in order to steer the world into this new world order. Everything we are seeing is moving us towards this goal. We have been conditioned to accept all of this and trust these people because we want to believe they are doing everything because they care. But in actuality, they are moving with the goal of control in order to bring about worship of Satan by this world. The more we follow them and their solutions, the more we have aligned ourselves to the will of Satan. We are falling for deception that is covered with a theme of knowledge. Because we don't recognize where this knowledge comes from and what it is doing, it's drawing people away from the faith. Today, what do you see within the church? We can exclude the unbelievers right now. Let's talk about those who have claimed faith in Yahshua. There's a great deal of them that follow science more than the word. They follow the knowledge. We should take heed to the advice the Apostle Paul gave Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 20 and 21. O Timothy, guard what was committed to your trust, avoiding the profane and idle babblings and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge. By professing it, some have strayed concerning the faith. You see, we are following and listening to profane and idle babbling and contradictions that is falsely called knowledge. And because of this, we are seeing a great falling away. Many people are straying away from the faith, though they do not recognize it. They give more credence to their false knowledge than anything else. And it's especially worse for those who have been put in the medical industry, because their experience puffs them up with pride. But as what was just proved, they do not know who has controlled their knowledge and this industry. They are just followers, following the lead of devils who have an ulterior motive that completely goes against their faith. Well, at least for some of them. And then what they do is push their man-made understandings on the rest of this world. Listen, the point I am making is the same one I make in all these videos. You need to submit to our Creator and forsake the ways of this world. All the ways and knowledge of this world are leading everyone to one direct place. Make sure you follow our Father's word and let go of this world. The more allowance you give them in your mind, the more power you give them and opportunities you give them to deceive you. Break out the matrix and understand the world that you live in. Focus on our Father, His word, His promises, and all the wonderful things He has given us and done for us. This world is falling, but if you are a believer, that means you don't have to fall with it. Be strong and victorious, for our redemption is near. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share it with others. If you have not done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Elohim willing, I upload every Friday. Don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, Truthunedited.com. As always, I really would like to thank all those who support this ministry. You know who you are. Please continue to pray for me and this ministry. Thank you for your support. Your contributions have been an extreme blessing to this ministry. You are an extreme blessing to this ministry in more ways than you know. Thank you for your continued support to this mission. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.